Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by the wonderful Peter Facinelli, who is the co-director and lead actor in the film On Fire, which currently has a SAG interim agreement, allowing us to have this wonderful conversation. So thank you for joining us. And I wanted to start by talking about the way in which you've told this story, because it's really kind of following in almost real time over the course of a few hours, a family facing potential displacement from wildfires, which is very much kind of honoring and in tribute to the number of families across America that have gone through this particular experience. And yet the way the story is told is so interpersonal and intimate with this family. And I was interested in, both as a director and an actor, how you wanted to tell a story that has this larger scope in terms of what it's telling the audience,
Yeah.
but in with the approach of it being very much specifically about the intimacy of this one family.
Yeah. For me, when I got the script, I thought, look, there's a lot of fires in the news. It's a very prevalent story. I want to be respectful of the families that are going through this. I don't want to, bring up this tragic event and have them have to relive it all over. And this isn't a movie that's meant to bring awareness to an issue that clearly we have enough awareness of. But I did feel like what happens in the news is we see these fires and they're devastating, and people lose their homes and people lose their lives. And as people who are watching it from afar, we send thoughts and prayers, and we're compassionate. But then it kind of dissolves out of the news and life goes on, and then all of a sudden another one happens. And we go through that cycle again. And I felt like this film, as much as you can watch the news and you can see footage and you can see people tell their story, this film kind of gives you an inside look of what that experience is like. And my hopes with it is when you're watching it and you go through it and you feel like you're a part of that family or a fly on the wall with that family, and it's a suspenseful ride. And when you're done with that film, you think, my God, I would never want that happening to me, anyone I love. And it becomes a little bit more personal. And my hope is after watching it, maybe we could come together as a community and pause and try to figure out how to curb these fires that are happening. And within that umbrella of a family survival drama, there's a lot of takeaways, which was really important to us. And one of them being watching this family grow through this experience, having them be there for each other, and in moments of despair where one of them couldn't possibly go on, the other one is roots them on and helps them keep going, which I love about this film, because usually in these throwback to a family survival film, the dad is the hero, and in this movie everyone, my wife, who played by Fiona Dourif, Asher Angel, we all have heroic moments. And that's what a family is. A family are people who come together, and they're there for each other. And watching that ride, that's a beautiful takeaway to get to the other end of that harrowing experience and think, if we could get through that, we could get through anything together as a family, And then we give tribute to firefighters, 911 operators. We try to celebrate them and the jobs that they do. We try to at the end of the film leave it with hope instead of despair, and we try to leave it off with a feeling of rebirth, like how can we regrow out of this experience. So all of those little takeaways were really important to me while we were doing the film, so it didn't feel like we were just exposing something that we see in the news and trying to benefit off of that, because that wasn't the goal. The goal for us was, let's do a throwback to a family survival film with all of these takeaways underneath.
And I think that's such a great point that you were bringing up, in terms of there's not one central hero to the family, and it's very kind of realistic in the fact that it's not the dad has a set of skills that it's going to get them through and they're all going to survive because of that. It really is, like you said, each of them kind of lifting each other up when they need it. And so in terms of figuring out scenes with Fiona and with Asher as kind of a family unit, how did you look to each other to think, okay, if this character is, if my son in the scene is like really excelling and the one kind of holding it together, I can allow my character to kind of like fall apart a little bit, and then here's the moment where he's really going to come forward for the family.
I think that there's just moments that I feel like are grounded. When I look at it, I'm like, I know that family. That family reminds me of my family. There's a moment that sticks out for me that we're on this road and my son's being pessimistic. He said, I don't think we're going to make it. And I say to him, we are going to make it, and there's a takeaway there too, a takeaway of faith, having faith and having, looking to a higher spiritual power to say, we're going to get through this. And he says, how do you know? And I say, because I'm your dad and I know. And it's one of those cliche lines that dads say, but I've said it, and at a moment of frustration, I snap at him. And my wife, played by Fiona Durf, calls me on it, and I end up turning to him and apologizing. And I think that's being a patriarch. When you're able to make a mistake or snap in a moment of frustration and turn around and take ownership of that. And I'm guilty of that in my family. I know my sisters are in my family. We all kind of love each other and snap at each other and call each other on stuff. And that's the love there. And so little moments like that to me are the moments where you feel like, okay, that family feels familiar to me. But yeah, there's moments in the script that the characters reach their boiling point, and the other characters are there to lift them up, and to me that's beautiful too. To watch this family grow through this movie, to me, is kind of the anchor of the film. My character at the beginning of the movie, he's saddled with all this stress. He's got, bills to pay for. He's got a dad who's sick. He's got, he's paying for his bills. He's got a kid who's going through college. He's not sure how he's going to pay for that. He's got a new company that is getting off the ground, and a wife who's pregnant, and a baby on the way. So, I mean, he's already maxed out. And then this fire comes, and he's thinking it's off in the distance, not going to happen to us, which many people do. And then it does. And that's another beautiful takeaway, is it shows how fast these fires happen, a shift of the wind, and it's at your doorstep. And when people say evacuate, it's better to be safe than sorry. There's a beautiful line from the film. My character says to his son, things can be replaced, but people can't. And I think that's another important, message. So we pepper in all these little messages underneath this suspenseful ride. So it's meant to be an entertaining movie, but I think you'll feel like, wow, I went on a ride with that family. I understood them. And so when this character goes through this harrowing experience, and his whole night becomes about survival, then all of those mountainous issues and stress that he had becomes anthills compared to surviving the night. So at the end of this journey, him looking at the takeaway of don't sweat the small stuff, like the more important things are right in front of you, which is your family, is another beautiful message.
It is such a great message. And, kind of again, going back to how this family navigate through this situation, it feels very relatable, because it feels like the way that they're trying to problem solve is very realistic and very grounded. And was that something that was really important to, like, you and Nick Lyon, who's your co-director on this, on making sure that all of the scenes felt very realistic and grounded in terms of how would they navigate through this? What would be the tools at their disposal, and what would be the ideas that they would potentially have based on their life experience?
Yeah. A lot of times in interviews, people have asked me what kind of preparation I've done for my film, and to be honest, in this film and other films, I've had to do lots of preparation. In this one, it felt more to me about using my imagination and connecting to the material and the actors in front of me, because I know what it's like to be a dad. I know what it would feel like to have my family threatened, and so. It just became about dropping me into that scenario. And then the challenge as an actor for me and Fiona Durf and Asher Angel and Lance was there was no real practical fire on set, because we're in the middle of a forest. The last thing we want to do is start a fire. So we were very respectful of where we were shooting and what the movie we were shooting was about. So, when we're looking up in the sky and you see embers floating, or we're running from a burning building, all of that is CGI afterwards. So it was very crucial to CGI to this film as well, to get that right. And I think Joe Lawson, who did the CGI, did an incredible job, because it's mixed in with some stock footage. And now when I watch it, I can't tell the difference where the stock footage is and where his work is, which is really nice. But for the actors having to react to things that aren't there, that takes just a lot of dedication and immense focus, because you can't half-ass that. If you're looking to the other eyes of the other actor, they got to be right there with you, and you got to both be feeling and seeing the same thing. And I had wonderful actors to work with, both as an actor and both as a co-director who's shaping their performances too.
I mean, one of the impressive things is the scope that the film manages to achieve visually. For the fact that it's made on an independent film budget, and you're talking a little bit about the CGI effects there, but also just really leaning into like the landscape in which you guys are filming to kind of get that sense of just the space around them. And so, how did you all set about making sure that you really captured the scope and the idea of what it would feel like to have these insurmountable wildfires coming at you? With all the constraints that come with independent film shooting.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, it was a great challenge. I give a lot of credit to Nick, who brought a lot of his independent knowledge of making bigger action films at a lower budget. And so when I showed up, I was meant to just come on as an actor, and Nick came on and had a whole plan for the lighting effects. We used a lot of lighting effects and smoke, and as an actor, you're sitting there going, "Oh, I hope this works," because you don't know. And then Nick and I really were very collaborative while we were filming. We were shaping the scenes and putting in more takeaways and trying to make sure we get lots of themes within that umbrella of the family survival drama. And then he ended up getting COVID in the middle of the shoot, and we were too far out at sea to go back to port. And he turned to me and he said, "Look, I respect you as a filmmaker, and I know you can finish up." And he handed the baton over to me. So it was kind of life imitating art imitating life, in the sense that my character dropped into this chaotic moment of time where he's running from this fire and there's lots of chaos around him. And now we're in the middle of this set where the director's ill, and now I'm the captain of the ship, and so I'm pulling double duty of camera and working with the DP and working with the actors and my performance. So he just took it one. I just took it one day at a time and kind of used it all, and it worked. I feel like it really worked. And then when we got to the editing room, we kind of took that collaboration into the editing room and then celebrated this collab with this co-director credit. But it was a wonderful experience. I was really excited to be able to be a part of all of that, because as an actor, sometimes you just all the time you just give your performance away and then you walk to the next one and then you keep your fingers crossed. So being able to see this one through, being able to shape the performances, being able to make sure that the rhythm of the film is right, it feels very tight and compact. The fire, like you mentioned, in and of itself is the antagonist of the film. So I remember we watched an early cut of the film, and we had action music in it, and it was just too wall-to-wall action oriented, and it felt like it was trying to be something it wasn't. And so we brought my composer in for my last film, and I told him, "Look, treat the fire like it's an alien invasion. Slow the music down, make it eerie and suspenseful, and give the fire its own character, and give it sound. Let's give it a sound design, and bring in the score, and being able to save the action music for the third act. It was really instrumental in finding the rhythm of this film, so that there's moments of quietness and moments where it builds up, and then moments where it's suspenseful and moments where it's action, and having that rhythm really helped carve that out with the score. And then the fire helped that rhythm too. When we watched an early cut, there was just too much fire. It was like fire, 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 fire. And then we shaped it, and we thought, okay, well, you don't have to see it all the time. It's there. So let's utilize it when we need to, kind of like Jaws. You see the shark and it becomes more powerful, and it's there. You always know it's there. And so being able to come in and see it when you need to see it made that more powerful than seeing it too many times and then all of a sudden it's watered down, and then it loses its effect. So I was really excited to be part of all of those conversations and shaping that, and shaping the actors' performances, and then helping to make the final product that you watch.
That's actually amazing in terms of the co-directing between you and Nick, because I had no idea that was how it came about. And I don't think I've ever talked to anyone who has suddenly been thrown into the director's chair like that halfway
Yeah,
through a project. And obviously, usually when you're directing, you have, you spend so much time going through preparation, creating shot lists. And
yeah.
so how is that a completely different dynamic in having to work in a much more instinctive way versus the way that directing usually so much is about the preparation, but at the same time still having preparation that Nick had done for the shoot?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it was wonderful that he had a foundation there
Yeah.
for me when I came in. Had he gotten sick second day or third day, it would have been a lot harder because you're thrown in on the first day. I would have had to shut down production and try to meet with all the heads of everybody and figure it all out. But because he got sick, a few weeks in, then I was able to. I was already working collaboratively with him. I was already working collaboratively with the actors. I was already working collaboratively with the DP, and Nick was very open to shaping scenes with me, and so it felt already like a wonderful collaboration. So then when Nick got sick, it was a little bit easier in that sense. But you're pulling double duty, and when you show up to work, there's not a lot of there's no time to really stress it because you got a job to do and you got a minimal amount of time to do it in. So it was wonderful that I was able to jump in, and I've directed before. So we were making our days and having fun and getting the stuff that we needed, and then bringing all that material to the editing room, and being able part of shaping it was really was I had a good time doing that. So I'm not happy Nick got sick at all, but it was a really fun experience for me to be able to be a part of it on a bigger level.
And part of shaping it both in front of and behind the camera is that idea that, kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier, where this experience changes this family, but it's very incremental in the way that it's happening gradually, because it's
Right.
not over the course of a week, it's over the course of a single day, essentially, kind of into the night, that we're watching them go through this harrowing experience. And so how did you set about figuring out what are those incremental changes going to be? What are the moments that are going to cause real change in my character?
Yeah. Well, again, thankfully that was mapped out in the script. There were moments where we were adding, a lot of setups and payoffs. We kept thinking, okay, we've got this umbrella of this family survival drama. How can we continue to have these setups and payoffs? Like having I don't want to spoil it, but having Asher Angel have his heroic moment at the end, that was something that came through in production. That wasn't in the original script. That we were thinking, he really needs to have an arc here, and it didn't have it in the original script. It was written differently, and so those collabs were wonderful, conversations to have. And when you have two directors, it's actually two heads are better than one. So now you're sitting there having those conversations, and an idea sparked, and then it grows, and then you're bouncing the ideas back and forth, which is great. We had a wonderful producer, Peter Winther, who came on, and he's also a filmmaker, and he was wonderful and added a lot of ideas. Um, and but the script really had a lot of that mapped out for us, of where the turns were. So that was helpful.
And the film also looks kind of almost behind the scenes of this experience, and the fact that there's also scenes where we get to see a 911 operator, and it's not just there for kind of the pacing of the film. It's really, what is it like for someone who is fairly new to this job as an operator, and it really wants to be able to help everybody, but is kind of going through that realization of, if I can just help one family, I can't necessarily get everybody out. I'm sitting in this chair. I can't go there and get them out myself. And so what were the important touchstones of that through line of the film for you?
Well, it was such an important through line. The 911 operator, played by Ashley Force. She was wonderful in the film. First of all, she's such a talented actress, so she brought a lot of talent to that role. But you have this family that's running through the woods, and they're being threatened, and trying to figure out at every turn how to survive. And then you cut to this 911 operator, and she's stuck in this room, and it's claustrophobic, and and there's a stillness there that you get to cut from this chaoticness to this stillness, but you feel disempowered because there's only so much you can do on the other end of that line. And we really wanted to represent how heroic those 911 operators are, because they're not running into the fire and saving the people from the burning building, but people's lives are on the other end of that phone. And so their information they're giving them is dire, and it's could mean life or death. And a lot of times for those 911 operators, they're helping people, and there's so many calls coming in, and they have to move. They move on to the next, and they don't know if that family got out. They don't know if those people were helped or not, and to have to go home with that and think, my God, I have all these lives that I was responsible for. How many did I help? And feel the feeling of helplessness while you're sitting in a position of power, and yet there's only so much you can do. Just shows how hard that job is and how heroic they are, and we really wanted to have that arc for her alongside this family. And I feel like the juxtaposition of that really worked. And with her character, she's a young woman. She's just started this job a couple of weeks ago in a very sleepy town where we set up one of the hardest things that happen is a cat gets stuck in a tree in these small towns, and then she's all of a sudden at ground zero for this huge harrowing event that's affecting so many people's lives. And the look of frustration and panic and desperation that she has throughout this film, of just desperately wanting to help people and not knowing if she's making a difference. And then she connects with this one family, and she does. And she gets to walk away with that, knowing that I got this family out. I saved this family. And that is something to hold on to.
And in terms of scenes in the film, there's the majority of the film is really you, Fiona, and Asher as kind of like this 3-family unit. And so what was the dynamic that the three of you were able to create in terms of how you were supporting each other as actors and scene partners, that then kind of transferred through to the way that your characters are in turn supporting each other as family members?
We were on a journey as actors and as these characters, so we relied on each other a lot. We looked to each other a lot. And especially when Nick got sick and they were looking to me as the head of the family, but I was looking to them too for support, and I couldn't have done it without them either. And having these two wonderful actors come to work every day and give it their all was so beautiful, because sometimes you get actors and they're on their phones and they're not paying attention. They come in and they half-ass it and they don't really care. And like, I was just fortunate to have professionals that came passionate about what they were doing, looking to take the scenes to another level, always looking to make the dialogue richer. There were scenes that beautiful improvisational stuff that came out of scene work that we, sometimes it was like doing a dance and you just kind of went where they would go, and vice versa. And at the end of the scene, we would just hug each other and be like, that was so beautiful. Thank you for that. It was, what a gift. If you remember, there's a scene where Fiona and I are in a trailer and we're discussing something that happened with my dad. And there's some really beautiful moments that just came out of, us two connecting in that scene. And I look at it and those are genuine laughs that she's having, because there were moments where I was giving to her and she didn't know I was going to say certain things, and I didn't know I was going to say certain things. And to watch her cry, laugh, and things that were not planned, but beautiful moments came out of it. And it's all in the film. And I was so proud of her and felt so connected with her in those scenes. She's a sweetheart and a wonderful actress. And we all grew through this experience, because we were going through it offset as well. Like, the whole idea of losing our director and being able to still keep everything together. And hey, we've got to all come together now, because we've got to keep moving forward. It was great.
And I know that you've also specifically screened the film for first responders and for 911 operators. What's the experience of that been like in being able to sit in a room and kind of watch them see elements and aspects of their lives and their experiences reflected back? Because that takes it beyond the idea of we're just telling stories. That kind of takes it to the place of, we're really reflecting real lives of people out there.
So beautiful, really so beautiful. I mean, look, I've done films that are entertaining and they're, wonderful and people enjoy them. But to have a film that's actually connected to people that have done these things in real life and are getting applauded for it, and taking it in and going, thank you for seeing me, is so wonderful. We had a screening at the Mammoth Film Festival, and the fire department came out, and they had their fire trucks there, and the whole fire department stood up, and they got a standing ovation, and they were so filled with gratitude, and really enjoyed watching it. I just did a screening in Oregon. I had first responders in the audience, and they were weeping, because they were so touched by being seen and heard. And there was one audience member. There's a line. It's an off-camera line where the 911 operator is talking to somebody on the phone, and they're trapped in the house because they ran back in to get their pictures. And it was just a line that I actually threw in post-production, because there was just screaming off on the other end. You didn't know what was happening. And I said, I remembered a story, my parents, and they're guilty of this too. They were in New York, and and this hurricane came in, one of the hurricanes. And I kept telling them, listen, guys, you should get out. There's warnings, and no, we don't want, we want to make sure the house is okay. And they stayed, and they probably shouldn't have. They ended up okay, but they lost all of our photos, got flooded from when we were younger. I lost all those photos, and like the basement was flooded, and they could have gotten hurt. And I scolded them after. I mean, I'm their son scolding my parents that, listen, you gotta listen, you gotta get out. And so, when, like I said before, when these warnings come on and people want to stay and protect their house, don't, protect yourself and get out. And so I remember the picture story, and I'm losing the pictures. And so I added this line where the woman said, hey, I ran back in to get my photos, and I'm trapped in the house, and I can't get out. There was someone in the audience that happened to one of their relatives, and they lost a relative because of that, because their relative ran back in to get the family photos. And it was it was just a line that I thought of in the midst of post-production to give it reason, and it's so interesting that these stories happen. And so hopefully that's a takeaway, that they don't run back in, leave, things can be replaced, people can't.
I mean, it's always really fantastic when you're able to create and tell stories that have that sort of response to people's direct experiences. So
Yeah.
Congratulations on everything with this movie, Peter.
Oh,
And
thank you so much. Thank you. I hope people watch it. I hope they enjoy it. I hope that they take things from it, and at the end of the day, feel something at the end where they can come together and think, okay, it's fire prevention month. October is fire prevention month. What can I do to protect my home? Because I've looked at the Hawaii fires, and there are homes that were saved because they cleared the brush, because they had certain things in play around their homes that protected their homes. There's things that we can do, but there's this mentality of, it won't happen to me, and I think that it's better to be prepared, better to be safe than sorry. And I think we can all come together to solve this issue. But on a more smaller note, like, there are things that you can do. There's things that you can do to protect your home and your family.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for such a lovely conversation about the film. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.